Welcome to Business Cake. These are conversations where we discuss creative work, ideas, and stories as we hear from a variety of guests, builders, and founders. Today's conversation, Patrick and I talk through updates on projects and opportunities that we both have. We challenge each other, we hear one another's perspectives. We talk about being a rookie versus an imposter, building high-performance teams, and then just the down days of being an entrepreneur. Let's dive in. I'm just going to jump in. I've been thinking about where we are. Maria and I, as we're building these things, she's got her airport business, retail. It's a retail spot in the airport, and she is part of a retail team. And hers is importing the artisan made goods from Mexico for that group. She's working on that. I've got Sandgrain. We're in the midst of Black Friday stuff right now. And so that's good. Things are hopping there. It's kind of, I was talking with Sebastian, who's my business partner on that. And that's for the listeners, not for you. You know that.
Yes, but I know that.
But it's been a good year. But this part of the year, November, December, is kind of like crisis moment if you're in leadership where you can't make any changes now. It's whatever the habits that you built prior to this moment, whatever character you have prior to this moment, whatever your operations are. When you're in a crisis, that's who you are. It's like this is just who we are. We can't really make changes right now.
But you're not in a crisis, you're just in a crunch for holiday.
Yeah, I mean it's just busy. Okay. Just very busy. And then two things specifically though that I think, and I'd like your thoughts on on this as well. But like I have a conversation with a former coworker later today, and he left Rackspace and has launched onto his own things. He's invested in some real estate funds. He has a business that he started, and it's a consulting business. And so we have a conversation today because he's interested in bringing me on. And it's in a fractional, it's like a fractional role, couple days a week for the next year. That's kind of the premise, and today we'll dive into details, and I'll understand what exactly that means. But one of the reasons I left Rackspace was because my time is valuable, and Rackspace was taking a ton of my time, and I wasn't able to take that and put it into these things that needed my attention, my energy, my time to be able to grow.
Okay.
And so I stepped out of Rackspace for that. And that's what we're focused on. That's what we're building. This has an appeal because it is fractional. Like it is saying from the get-go, I just need a minority of your, I need a piece of your time, a piece of your attention. And so I think about leverage with this. It's like, it's my ability to apply intentional effort on a particular task or something to get an outsized result.
Okay.
And so is this a scenario where maybe there's leverage in that for me where I can step in? It keeps me sharp in the corporate world, kind of like business world, and being able to consult and do that kind of thing. Keeps those skills up to date, provides some sort of another source of income for us, which is great because we're in the midst of investing a lot of our extra cash and capital into growing these businesses. And so having something else come in would be good. So I don't know. Like I'm thinking through that, and there's some ideas, but I think for me, my time is valuable. And so I have some capacity right now. I could put it towards that if it's going to bring good, positive consequences, I think.
Yeah. So your main, what the things that you would get out of it, what's the benefit? Number one, pay.
I think, yeah, pay would be one. And I think steady pay, right? I mean, it's like what's coming in would help us in our living expenses so that then we can take anything that we were using for living,
right,
and we can put it to the businesses.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And then second, do you think it would help you develop your business sense? Because I know you had mentioned that before, like wanting to make sure you're growing, you're putting yourself towards challenges, you're getting better.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that's one of my questions that I have. That's not something I would necessarily ask him, but
why not?
Internally, well, because I don't think he could answer that for me. I think that's something that based off of the clients, the opportunity, then that's something I just have to say, do I see this or not?
But why wouldn't you ask the question? Because what if he does answer it? Like, what do you have to lose?
I mean, I have nothing to lose.
I would ask it.
I just don't know if okay. Yeah.
I mean, because it also helps him know you. That's a huge part of, what you think about is learning and growing. And so if you're like, I want a situation that's going to make me better and challenge me, he might be able to offer some stories where that has helped him. Or if he's just like, look, this is stupid grunt work that's just going to be boring.
Yeah.
Or just routine,
The way he brought it out was around leadership, and being able to work with some of the leaders. So it doesn't sound like it's going to be a lot of grunt work. It's like being able to take the grunt work and apply it and say, hey, here's the themes. Here's what it is. But I do think one thing I would get out of it is network. It's interfacing with business owners, CEOs that I wanted otherwise.
Yeah, that is cool. That's a third one.
What'd you drop? Just kidding. It wasn't that loud.
I dropped this little fuel canister.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's a third one though. Network. That's valuable.
Yeah. I think so. I'm leaning towards doing it, I think, and we'll see how it goes today.
Well, it brings up a good point of input output. Like how much are you putting in, how much are you getting out? And are those, just at a very basic level. I'm sure many people have written excellent books on this and given it great terminology, but if you're putting a lot in and getting a little bit out and it's lopsided, then I bet you a lot of people do that. And then there's probably I bet most people are probably close to being even, where they're getting out about what they put in. So time, money, they're making what they're making, and then that's even. But I think there are people that are focused and intentional about their input and get out a lot more than they put in. And I think that's probably more of what you're looking for.
Yeah. It absolutely is.
So that's a good question. What is it that you're investing in? And what's your relative output to those things? Is it less than, equal to, greater than?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the other thing is, does it pull me? I think I'll have to have built-in checkpoints with him if I take it on to where month 3, month 6, if it's pulling me away from building up the distillery and working on that and being able to focus there, then I think it's a no-brainer. Like I have to cut it.
Is he looking at you for a long-term role, or is this just he sees it as temporary?
The time limit he put was a year. That was kind of how he let in. I would probably look at it as let's try 6 months first.
Yeah.
And see how it goes. But he's trying to build up his, like this agency, essentially, this consulting practice. And I am one of the first because we had really good rapport when we worked together and had a similar approach and mindset. And so we connected on that. There's things that he doesn't have to explain or onboard me into when it comes to his agency. So I think it's easy for him for me to step in because we can just pick up and run. But so he would probably love it to be long-term, but I mean, that's not really, I think
the client gigs you can pick up and do are not necessarily long-term projects.
Yeah. That can be just engagements. I think the other interesting thing is he is a guy who is a builder, and we talk about that a lot. And he has that mindset. Like, he was a VP at Rackspace. And while he was doing that, he had other kind of like passive things going that he didn't have to spend time into, but they were generating funds for him. And then when it was time for him to step out, he could step in and fully commit himself to these things. Yep. But he has vision. He builds. He's intentional with that. And then so it's a different sense with him where I think other leaders that I worked with at Rackspace were very much geared toward the corporate world. And there's a slightly different mindset when you step into your own ventures and business and small business. So he has that.
That's awesome. I think it's probably one of the reasons why you guys connected while you were at Rackspace.
Yeah, it was.
Do you think he'll ever be a future guest on Business Cake?
100%. 100%.
All right.
Do you ever say that? Do you ever say 100%?
Well, I am working hard not to. I'll be honest.
I think I would be behind it if people also said like, oh, 60%. You know, is he going to be a guest? 60% chance. But nobody uses it like that. It's either all or nothing.
Right. Or the worst is when it's like, dude, 1,000%. It's like you
1,000%.
clearly did not pass math class. I was talking with a guy earlier this week. He's from South Korea. And he's a builder. His name's Austin. And he has his own kind of side financial planning firm. He's a CFP. And he's worked with like this CPA or that CPA. And we kind of stay in touch. But one of the things he's picked up recently is in between CPA firms, he's doing SAT prep for high school students, like going into college. And so he's getting into all the stuff and looking at it. And he made the comment that the high school level of math that we expect of people here is the middle school level of math that he experienced in South Korea.
Seriously?
Yeah. Well, that's what he said. I mean, he wasn't joking. He was just like, I thought I was going to have to get into a bunch of really, really, critical thinking and difficult problems. And I looked at the math that is expected on the SAT, and he's like, oh, we do this in middle school. So
that's great.
So that's why people say 1,000%, because
we don't have any concept of
they never learned that percent just actually means 100. So
that is that's kind of frightening.
I don't know. It's frightening, dude. It's fine.
We're smart.
Higher level maths are not necessary, especially with everything that technology brings us these days.
We just need practical maths.
I think
like,
so.
What are you actually going to use?
Yeah, there's maths for your trade that you need. I also saw a rant that somebody went on talking about the way that people speak and how it's just careless. And he quoted the Office Space movie where I think it's one of the Bobs, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to need you to go ahead and turn these in. And he said that movie and that guy is the one that created this phrase of go ahead and blank. And this rant, the guy said, now I see it everywhere. It's on like cooking videos. It's on podcasters. I'm going to go ahead and talk about what I want to talk about. He said, you're wasting all of those words. Just say what you're going to say. Instead of going ahead to talk about it, just say, I'm going to talk about whatever it is. I always look for things like that we can eliminate. Yeah. Another one that I have is that annoys me is when people say I'm trying to think about blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
So, no, you're not trying to think about it. You're actually thinking about it. That's what thinking is when you're thinking. You're not trying to think.
Yes. Well, there's one when I write emails that I find myself writing out and then I delete because it's so dumb, which is I am writing you this email and it's like, obviously that is happening.
Right.
But I'm also not, I'm writing you this email as I'm sitting in this chair, as I have thought about these things, and I'm going to go ahead and.
Yes. Yeah.
Nah.
Well, I'll write it out and then go remove all those things because you can put them in there where it's like, I'd like to talk to you about this today. And it's like, you don't even need that sentence. All you have to do is jump in and just start talking about it.
Yeah. No, for sure. There's there was this guy that I worked with, and I wrote some of the stuff down that he said because we were in a meeting one day and he spent about 1 minute answering somebody's question, but not answering it because he kept doing that kind of thing where he would start it and then pivot and start something else. And he's like, and so you think that you are understanding what he's saying, but he never actually finished a sentence. So he's like, yeah, I want to just say that what you're saying is kind of like what I've thought. And
right.
This guy over here has talked about, and just like, dude, could you? And so I just started writing him down, and it was, he was an executive. It was great.
The funny thing is, most people listening were probably fine with it. They just kind of go along with what this guy's saying because they're just not necessarily paying attention, or we become so accustomed to it.
And I think when you're in person, you're picking up on the energy of the conversation as well.
Right.
And so there's the nonverbal stuff that's happening where you are just drawn in and I'm following you.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Yeah, I do. Yeah. And nothing's actually being said. Well, let's make sure we're more intentional about it and not saying 100%.
I'm going to go ahead and work on that.
60% of the time, it'll work every time.
Oh, 100%.
Well, I'm excited about you with the consulting gig and seeing what happens. I think it'll be cool to try it out at least. Maybe it'll fill some time, give you a little extra runway.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. And I think especially right now for Etla distilleries, because operations are in Mexico.
Right.
There's not a ton of time that's taking for me. And I think that's going to ramp up next year. And as we get more and more into it, but
well, that cash burden on like pre-revenue projects like this, once the sales start, shifting the cash burden from the founder to the customer takes a runway, and I've found that with the coffee shop where if you have the cash to build the runway for that shift to happen, then you'll be fine. And if you don't, that's when businesses have to, there's a lot of other questions of like, can the market afford it and things like that. But I think assuming all those other things are positive, then, you've got to have that cash runway to make sure you can have enough time to shift to the customer.
Yeah. I know we are in the throes of that. And so I am hopeful. We haven't taken on any outside investors or capital right now. And my goal is to, to stretch that as long as I can. The time will come when we do, but it's tight. It's a burden. You've been doing this for 3.5 years with the coffee shop.
Yes.
4.
I went before that with our bookkeeping company,
Yeah.
One of the things we practice there is the best time to start a company is when you have a job. And so if you can use that to offset that cash outlay, then that's helpful.
Yeah. Well, where are things with that? Are you?
Yeah. So I think what I wanted to bring up today is one of the things that came up with Austin when I was talking to him, and then just the reality of being a builder are the down days, the hard days. And I found in a lot of the people that I've talked to that run companies, whether they're restaurants or construction or tax firms, whatever the entity is, it doesn't really matter. Builders kind of feel the same things. And so, one of the things that Austin was talking about is imposter syndrome. He didn't necessarily use that language, but a lot of times where you feel like you're in a spot that you're not qualified to be in. And I've heard celebrities talk about this, actors, I've heard a lot of people who are actually trying to build something feel this way. And the question is, what do you do with that? Because I think everybody will come across that at some point if you're trying to do something.
Right.
Have you found that to be true?
Yes, 100%.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and ask you to be more accurate on that percentage. So, yeah, I think imposter syndrome is unavoidable. Come to it if you're not prepared and all of a sudden that voice is there, then you feel like it's a legitimate voice. And several years ago, I listened to a Harvard Business Review podcast where this author and speaker talked about how to handle the voice of the critic internally.
Yeah.
And she did such a good job because she said, the worst thing you can do, obviously the worst thing you can do is believe the critic, right? So we're not going to believe the voice of the critic. But the second worst thing that you can do is try to fight the voice of the critic, the inner critic. And what she said is that's wasted energy. And what you're essentially doing is saying that voice is right.
Huh.
That voice has invited you into a battle. And the moment you agree to fight that battle, you've lost. Because it's taken your energy, time, attention off what you should be focusing on. And it's an unwinnable battle. Like, you can't reason with it. You can't make it go away, right? And maybe some people can, and that's fine. But what I've found is the best thing to do is let it be there. Don't fear it. And in those two things, the volume goes down on it, where you're just kind of like, okay, and move on. You're not accepting it, but you're just letting it be there. You're ignoring it to a degree, ignoring its influence, and just moving on. Because if everyone feels imposter syndrome, then we all are imposters, right? So we're all walking that same thing.
Yeah, to an extent. Yeah.
But we're not. I think it's a necessary part of growth to step into somewhere that you're probably not quite qualified for. And the answer is that's okay.
Yes. That's where
Yeah, go ahead.
That's where I have thought of myself in different situations as a perpetual rookie, which is kind of that sense. Like it's taking that same narrative and turning it a little bit, where instead of an imposter where I don't belong there, I'm just a rookie. I'm stepping in, I'm learning, I'm beginning, but I'm going to get better at this. And I wish you guys, I wish our one listener could see the video right now, because Pat's just ripped open a chocolate bar with his teeth and just tore into it. And breakfast looks good in Buford.
Dude, I was trying to be quick so that by the time we got done talking, I wouldn't have this chocolate in my mouth. This episode is brought to you by Cadbury Milk, dairy milk chocolate. The creaminess is unmatched.
And yeah, just for clarification on the ad, it's brought to you by that because we enjoy it. Patrick's enjoying it. Cadbury is not sponsoring this in any way. But
yeah. So what were you saying?
It's just that probably the idea of being a rookie as opposed to an imposter. Because a rookie implies that I will learn, I will grow, I'll get better. Okay. And I can even maybe achieve some sort of competency, maybe even mastery in this area. You know, like, but I do belong here.
Sure.
An imposter is so you don't belong. And you're fighting against that sense of, why am I even here? And if you start engaging the critic, then that's the spiral of, you don't want to get into that spiral, I guess.
Right. And I mean, I think there's also a way to dive down into the subconscious, probably feelings of why that imposter syndrome, like what is it standing on? Because sometimes I've thought, okay, I obviously feel over my head, which is why this is here. And so what's causing me to feel in over my head? And then if you can start backing that out and you can pinpoint, okay, it's this particular situation, you know, so in tax work, there are always situations that we've never seen before, ever. And it's just because of the person or the legislation or the money or what they did at some time, you know, or what they want to do. And in the beginning, I was always freaking out, like, man, I've never seen this before and I don't know what to do. And, you know, I'd email my business mentor, and he's so generous, and he would just reply with, yeah, I've seen this 100 times. And he just goes through and you do this. Sometimes this happens. Sometimes this happens. And so I've learned now, like when that happens, to say, okay, I feel it over my head because I haven't seen this before. But sometimes I'll even tell my client, I haven't seen this before. And it immediately just snaps the rug out from under that critic, because it's almost like it has power from hiding. And so if I try to say, well, we can figure this out, and I'm allowing that inner critic to determine how I talk to that person. And so I say, look, I've never seen this before. I'll talk to some other people that probably have, and we'll see what we can do. Yeah. Then it helps me just be at rest. So instead of trying to go after self-preservation, I go after, like, what am I afraid of losing? What am I trying to prove something? Like, to who? You know, why am I trying to prove that? And it gets you, I think, when you're feeling that imposter, then one of the reactions can be, which is what you're pulling the rug out from under, but one of the reactions can be where I start to posture, and I start I'm pretending and posturing, and there's, I think, a level of inauthenticity in that. Of course. There were one of my managers at Rackspace, when I was just getting into leadership, just basically, I reported to him for probably 2 months. It was very short. But he basically said, you just need to fake it till you make it, you know, and that's the common phrase. But what that leads you to is posturing. So then you get into these meetings, you get into these conversations, these situations, and you're kind of you're overprotective, you're defensive, you're trying to position yourself because of this feeling, which everybody has, and it keeps you from just stepping in and actually engaging. And so then it is
exhausting to do that. It took me a bit to.
The terrible thing about that is you're making an agreement already to say, I don't belong here and I don't know, so I'm going to fake it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the opposite attitude, I think, is being in the arena and saying, I'm in the arena and I'm going to learn and grow and fight tooth and nail to figure out what do I need to do to make this thing work.
Yes, exactly. Which is, it's probably a subtle mindset shift, but I think it's huge. And then there's even areas where we come up to, I know for me, I'll speak for myself, where I come up to an edge.
Yeah.
Where I haven't done this thing before. And that feeling, that sense is right there and it's present.
Right.
And you have the decision of stepping in and leaning in and continuing to do that thing or not. And I think if I don't lean into that, there's no growth.
Right.
You know, and I choose the comfortable route. And so then all of a sudden the lane in which I am running in starts to become a rut, and that just becomes what I am doing. And I'm never pushing those edges out, and there's no maturity, there's no growth. Like I'm not expanding. And I think for a builder, for an entrepreneur, it's like that sense of discomfort.
Right.
You are just recognizing the fact that that is part of your daily life. Like you're leaning into those. You've got to engage it. You can't let it define your lane.
Yeah, that's good. It reminds me of the conversation we had earlier this week where you were talking about hope having a restless component to it. And, and part of what I've been thinking about this week is despair. Because if you got everything on the line, like it doesn't matter if you're a tech startup with like hundreds of million, or if you're a restaurant that's got 20,000 dollars. It doesn't matter, because despair is despair, and a person feels the same emotions, and so the spectrum is there. But despair doesn't create restlessness; it creates sedentary, where you just stop and you slow down to a complete halt and you can't move. It's the paralysis of it.
Yeah.
And so when situations pop up, there's my tendency is, if something seems insurmountable at the time, I just go all the way down to the bottom. Nothing will work out. This is all terrible. Why did we do any of this? Just straight to the bottom. It doesn't take me long to get there either. And so in those moments, I work to get out of the despair. But I think what you're talking about, like in that rut, like when you have a hope to keep going and the hope that this will work out, the restlessness is the thing that gets you out of that rut.
Yeah.
Because you've got to keep moving, you've got to keep going, and sometimes you don't know what else to do except what immediate problem is here? Let me take care of that thing.
Yeah.
And eventually the air will clear.
Yeah. It's, if I take a step back and look maybe culturally as well, then I think, then this may be too far what I'm about to extrapolate. So this is faux-losophy, where it's like fake philosophy.
Okay. Let's go.
So, but as a young person, in your 20s, there is this sense, and I mean, maybe even before then in high school, where we are expected in America to choose your degree, to choose what you're going to major in, to choose your career. And then it's kind of like, that's your thing, or whatever you're doing, that's who you are. Like, I need to be able to put you in this category or in this box. And then that's what you're expected to do.
Right.
And I think we just within that inherently, there's that idea of the rut, or the idea of where you're not going to try to push those edges out and try to expand. And a lot of influencers over the ages have been like mathematicians and scientists and inventors and farmers and writers. It's like there was a lot of disciplines involved
They're
in
in
what they
every
did.
field.
They're just doing. And I don't know, like I think there's a piece of that where if we let people do that and we didn't expect a lot of experience from 20-year-olds, which is great, but then also
Right.
we expect them to push those edges and try and fail and keep going and not stop. And then I think that would be a lot healthier. I know I felt it's not that, it is kind of an oppressive feeling though, those kinds of expectations. Like you've got to consciously work your way out of them.
Yeah,
But
I think so. And I think that's where apprenticeship would be really helpful. Like if you could think about apprenticing and I mean, we can't ever go back to that as a society. It's not going to happen. But, like you were talking about earlier, considering yourself like, all right, I'm a rookie in this. And there's no shame in that. There's beauty in that because you're being honest about it. But that also means there's this one interview, Blake Griffin it's a press conference, I guess, after a game, or maybe it's before a game. I don't know. Norm Macdonald's in the crowd, crowd of
this is old, obviously.
Yeah. Okay. Of journalists, and they go to Norm, and he's like, Blake, you know how like Norm's style is so wonderful, but he just says, just talk for a minute about the fact that there's never been a repeat on Rookie of the Year. Like, what do you think about that? And of course, Blake, I think it was Blake. He didn't know what to do. He just kind of laughed. But the thing about being a rookie is it's 1 year.
Yeah,
then you're no longer a rookie. You can't continue to be a rookie. Like you're forced out of it, And so I think by nature, people learn and grow. And so just by you being in there and trying, like you're gonna move past whatever those things are. And so don't let the oppressive narrative be the narrative that you choose to listen to.
Yeah. That's one that's just hilarious. And Norm.
He's so good.
He is so good. But yeah, I mean, I think that is a great way to look at it. It is a point in time, and you'll move past it, and you'll know, like, you aren't a rookie more than once in that area.
And we have to give people permission to not be a rookie anymore. That's the other side of it is like, how are we creating space for the rookies around us to
so how have you done this because I think as a leader in different areas for you, I mean, you could probably pull from coffee shop or community or the accounting firm, but not really. I'm not talking about succession really, where somebody's looking to take your spot, but in development. Yeah. How have you made a place for that to where people are able to step in and be a rookie and fail and be themselves and grow? How do you set that up? How do you encourage that?
Yeah, I would love to answer this question. I'm going to go ahead and answer it. I'm in response to the question that you asked. So
damn it.
We've all heard like, I do, you watch, I do, you help, you do, I help, you do, I watch. Like that's
I haven't heard that.
Okay.
But I get
it. Actually. No, you have heard it.
Yes. Now. So,
I mean, that's like the basic steps that are taken whenever you're training or developing somebody. Very, very simple. I am not afraid of failure, and I'm not afraid of other people's failure. There's a book called The 1 Minute Manager Meets the Monkey. And it's very, very short, but if you haven't read it, it's great. And they talk about level 1 and level 2 insurance on decision making. And level 1 insurance is where I've already passed the decision making onto you, or the responsibility, the task, whatever. Before you commit the next step, level 1 insurance, you come and tell me the situation and what you're going to do. Simple. Level 2 insurance, as you can guess, would be you tell me after you've done it. This is what I did. And so you're still checking in, like the insurance is still there. Hey, this was a situation. This is what I did, so it's still the process might've been moved forward, but it hasn't set yet. It's still warm where you can go do something with it. And so I use that a lot, and it's not hard for me to believe in people and believe that people can do things. It's often it's their own lack of confidence and belief in themselves that they can do the thing that we're talking about here. And I lose my patience with that. I get really frustrated. So that's where I have to be careful, where I'm like, you're good at this. Stop saying you're not good at this. Of course you're good at this. You've been doing it for years, or whatever. And so that is not encouraging. I have to be careful to say, what are you concerned of? Let me help you through it. But so, the store manager we have at Chin Chin is an example where, she worked there as a barista for 6 months. And then, we were side by side, kind of, she saw how everything was. And then as it became obvious that she would be a good candidate for the store manager, we met every single week. I gave it to her and I was like, we just talked about all the different things. And then like at this point in time, she'll just check in when she needs something, or it's a deviation from the norm. And so I say that because she's 23 and I don't think like youth should put people off from having responsibility. A lot of times they're probably better at it than older folk because there's not as many trappings. Now, of course, there are mistakes that are made, but those are great because we can learn from them, even if it's like a dire circumstance. Now, obviously, this wouldn't work in like heart surgery. You wouldn't want a heart surgeon to be like, yeah, just go ahead and do your best. I think it'll be fine. This is just a coffee shop, though. It's not a problem.
Right. The level of consequence is lesser.
There's something I love about, there's a concept in my brain of just like building a team of like really highly skilled and qualified people. So I'm always looking for that. And so when I'm training somebody, I already assume they're qualified and competent, and I want them to be on my team, and I want to give them that sphere so I don't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah.
Some people don't like delegating. I'm not one of those people. How would you answer that question that you asked?
I think you and I are similar in the fact that I like to give people the opportunity. I want to get them at bats. I want to get them in the arena. Like I get frustrated with the mindset where if somebody doesn't want to grow or try or take that on, that's where I struggle. I also want to have high performing teams. And so you need those people that are willing to step out. And I think it's the willingness to step out with the willingness to learn and be coached and grow. Like you've got to, if somebody is just going to keep going and they're not going to take any kind of feedback, that could be dangerous.
Absolutely.
So it's similar to your framework that you said that I can't repeat because I've only heard it once, but it's
super simple.
I do, you watch. I do, you
help.
And
then you just reverse it.
Okay. You do, I help.
Yeah.
And then you do, I watch. Okay.
And then you do, and I don't worry about it anymore because you're doing it and I'm somewhere else.
I'm not even watching. I'm gone. I'm on the beach. I think it's similar. I like having a system in place to where I know where I can step in and check. So there's a phrase that I came across, and it says a good leader who cares about their business keeps a sharp eye out for the cheap and shoddy.
Yeah.
Because who among us can be trusted at all times?
Yeah.
And that was really helpful because it put there's still a responsibility that I have to check in and to make sure that things are going in that direction, like we're getting the results that we want to see. But also there's the freedom in that to let somebody try, to let somebody grow. And I've had probably a lot of I've been apprenticed by a lot of people, but not by one. And I have wanted a single person to teach me how to do things. And that's not been my experience. But I try to find people that are open to that. So that might be a rambling response, but it's like, it's just trying to find the right people for it.
Yeah. And I think you never want to just leave somebody without checking up on their work. There's comfort in the inspection when you go in and just ask, how are these things? How are these things? And then you do your own research to make sure that's right. And also in the handoff, one of the things I had to learn with her in particular was how to, and I've never been very good at this, but in the I do you help to you do I help to you do I watch, it becomes not the way that I would do it, but the way that she would do it.
Yeah.
And so in the beginning, like the way that I do it is the right way and you need to learn it. But eventually, if she really is bringing who she is, it's going to have her fingerprints on it. And so I have to step back and allow things to be different. Maybe not the way I want them to be, but this is where the inspection, like you're talking about, like the accountability of checking up on, like, all right, what metrics matter then? Because those are the ones that we're going to have to focus on. And the other things I'm going to let go.
Yeah. Yeah. That can be, and that can be hard because I think at a scale, like that probably is hard at scale at different points because as things grow, you have leaders that want to maintain control. And what you're talking about by letting somebody still accomplish that task or manage that situation or run that part of the business, you've got to let them, like you have to let go of control. And that's hard to manage within yourself, of like, at what point do you let go of the control? What do you need to care about? What do you not? That's tough.
Well, and I think that's the beautiful thing about like small to medium enterprise companies is you can still kind of have the way that like a person would do something. I think once you get too big, though, everything becomes policy. There's no, you control through policy. And so you can control through all those things. And there's less of the person's, their individuality coming into the position as much as just fulfill this role, meet these expectations.
Right.
But that's why I like small businesses, because you really get to see people make things better. Yeah.
I did work with one leader at Rackspace. His name was Ben Caird. Still is Ben Caird. And
Ben still cares.
He does. Ben Caird and still does. He was the best operations leader that I ever worked with because of that balance. Like he helped his leaders, of which I was one, in manage the policy, but the person was always part of the conversation. Okay. And so he had the relationships and pushed for that, and was willing for there to be nuance, was willing for there to be gray area and ambiguity, and let's have the conversation. And so it wasn't just sticking to that. And so our organization was probably like 350 people, maybe a little larger than that, and it spread across different geographies. But it worked really well because of that, because of the tone that he set and his willingness to be able to engage all the different nuances of that and help us as leaders to have the same approach. And so I think it can be done. but he was one out of, dozens of leaders that I worked with who did that well.
Sure.
It is so rare.
Well, I think it's harder in a big, I'm going to say corporate setting, but because you don't have to. Like if in a smaller company, if you don't put the person first, it's people leave. Like it's clear. But in a big company, it's kind of like, well, we're all just, I'm assuming a lot here. So, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
I think you're right.
So the fact that he cared and was willing to do that is like you're overcoming two different obstacles there that are both challenging.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It is. And I think gives me hope for the at scale pieces. Like this stuff can be done. So.
Yeah. Anything can be done at least once.
What do you have coming up? What are you looking at?
Well, let me say another thing that I came across that I really liked this week, last couple weeks.
Okay.
How you do anything is how you do everything. I was watching a TV show that shall remain nameless for the sake of the copyright infringement.
The Apprentice.
It was definitely not that one. But that statement was made. This villain was talking to the protagonist and said, "Oh, I know how you're going to do that because I've seen you do this, and how you do anything is how you do everything." I was like, man, I want to bring that quality. I want to keep that at the forefront of my mind so that everything I do matters and has that same quality. And obviously some things you happen too fast, right? Or it's like you can't give the attention you need. And there are some exceptions, but having the attitude that how you do anything is how you do everything really has kind of been a hook in me. And so I want to do everything really well. I want to do it well. That means I have to do everything that I do well. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. That's I mean, that takes a lot of discipline and intentionality, I think. So it's a hard thing.
I don't think it's hard. I think it's just a matter of thinking about it. How I do anything is like, okay, right now, what we're doing, I want to do it well. I want to be fully engaged. I don't want the voice of the inner critic to say this or that. And so that's okay. So for me, it's actually created a lot more freedom because I don't have to think about everything. I just have to think about the thing that I'm doing. Because I think before I was thinking about everything and I need to do everything well. And it's like, no, you don't. Just do this one thing well, because that's what you're doing. And when you get to the next thing, do that one well.
Yeah.
And that, James Clear, I'm sure, has a million things to say about that.
Yeah. No, that's okay. I see what you're saying. Then there's a basketball coach, Coach Wooden.
Woo.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace.
But his definition of success was a lot of little things done well. Yeah. Which stuck with me, and that I think that's probably.
Well, Pop had a similar one, right?
Pound the rock.
Was that it? I thought there was more to it than that.
I mean, it's a longer phrase, but it's basically the stone cutter's credo is what it's called, where it's like this guy went and watched a stone cutter yard and people just like breaking rocks.
Okay.
And he said it wasn't, they're sitting there hitting a rock, and then it breaks. And so the Jacob Riis, Riis, is the guy who came up with it. And he said it wasn't the 100th blow that broke the rock.
Okay.
It was all the other ones that came before.
Right.
And so it's just, you just have to sit there and pound the rock until it breaks. And so it's that.
Yeah. And that's like a lot of little things. The way that I relate that to what I'm saying is like everything you do is pounding the rock. And so
Yeah.
hit it in the same spot, because eventually it'll break.
Yeah. I don't want to just keep throwing stuff out, but
Throw it out.
It's tied in. It's tied into this idea, where it's a lot of things. And so there's another guy who had a phrase where he's about a hedgehog in a box, and he says a hedgehog knows one big thing.
Is this Aesop, or is this?
He got it from Aesop, where he attributed a value to an animal that had nothing to do with the animal.
Just kidding. Okay, all right.
So it's like, it was just his illustration, but he says a hedgehog knows one big thing. A fox knows many things. And so is that idea like a hedgehog would just get locked in and cannot adapt or adjust or do anything. It's like they're just going to go after that one big thing. And everything they do is for that one big thing. And a fox is like, I'm going to do this over here and I'm going to do this, and is able to adapt to the environment, to situations, and react while still, moving forward or moving in a direction. And so it's that idea, I think, of a lot of little things done well. Like if you can be fox-like in that, as opposed to.
So is the fox the better version?
I think the best version is a foxy hedgehog.
Okay.
Where it's like you're going after something, you have a goal, but the way that you get there, you're not tied into it. You're able to let go of it. You're able to pivot. And so it might be a blend, but I do think, like, typically if somebody is only a fox or only a hedgehog, or you have you're working with somebody that's a hedgehog and you're a fox, then there's going to be these conflicts because one doesn't want to adapt.
Right.
And the other one's like, but there's all these things going on,
I love that you just used that guy's allegory and then like crucified it. Took whatever meaning he had of these two separate things. It was like, no.
He has a whole essay on it, and I will not. Actually, yeah, let me just read the whole thing right now.
You can see that in another episode of Will reading things.
Yeah, it's going to be its own segment for an hour.
All right, what about you? What are you working on? What are you looking at?
I mean, we are hitting go time for the distillery. So I mean, we met with a PR firm yesterday to talk about a launch in the spring and how do we want to go about that, and making sure we have collateral and photos and product so that we can build press release, and then they're going to take that and be able to get it out. And so having that as kind of a work back point. So if we need to be ready for that by March, what are all the different milestones we need to hit? And so I'm thinking about that. We have to buy tickets for a trip to Oaxaca because we're going to be bottling product down there in January.
Nice.
Of mezcal, and we have to get approvals for the labels. So that's where my space is at, and just making sure we can lay that stuff down. So
that's awesome.
Got to organize it.
Are you feeling good about go time? Yeah. What are your feelings?
I am. I'm excited about it. It was a really cool conversation to think about these things, and we are close. We've got to hit, we've got to have, we have to get still approvals in Mexico and then approvals in the US for what we're going to sell. We have to get insurance. We have to sign contracts with a distributor. So there's those things that have to happen in the next 3 months, but I'm excited. I'm really excited.
That's good, man. It's awesome.
It's for me, it comes back to my time and how am I using it and being able to make these things count. The other piece about leverage that I think about, So one is taking action that's going to have an outsized result and being intentional with that. The other one is placing yourself, the like placement, where you put yourself in a place where you can have favorable consequences that happen because of where you're positioned. And so that's what we're doing with the distillery, is like we set ourselves up to be an export company in Mexico. So we can export anywhere. We can export any mezcal. So it's not just ours. We can work with distillers that already have a product that's already labeled. We could be white labeled. You know, it's like we have a lot of options that can come up. So once we get this rolling and get ours out there, work through the logistics, then it's gonna, I think my goal is that it will have placed us favorably to be able to take advantage of some of these situations. So it's like I'm trying to take the fox metaphor. You know, it's like we've got the goal of what we're building, but now it's like, can we be positioned to take opportunities as they come up and be able to run with them, even though it might not be the thing that I had fixed in my mind.
Business Cake is produced by Sound Ops. The music is written by Philip Cusius, and this is hosted by Will and Patrick. If you enjoyed it, please rate us 5 stars wherever you find your podcasts.